Section 4 of The Daredevil of the Army. Experiences as a buzzer and dispatch rider by Austin Patrick Corcoran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2. The author assists at a victory and abandons his bike for better things. Part 2. "Come here," said the officer in perfect English. He approached, and once more they went through his pockets. Then he was ordered to take off his clothes. "I thought the brutes only meant to make their search more thorough, so, of course, I complied very promptly. While I was doing it, one of their soldiers, at a sign from the officer, ran up to a motor lorry, took off a bundle, and brought it over to me. And can you guess what was in it? I give up. A German private's uniform." Harrison stops for a moment, as if the memory were too much for him. "Even when they ordered me to put it on," he says, "I could scarcely realise what it meant. Can you think of me fighting on their side? I suppose they were too far from their base or something to send me back, but fancy putting me in one of their beastly coats! And God, how those brutes treated me!" Too frank, too courageous to pretend any friendship, he glared at the men round. I can imagine the look on his young haughty face. An Englander! How they were hating us just then! But there was nothing for him to do but obey orders. So, with a German pack on his back and the Kaiser's cap on his head, he started on his weary march. "For a while," goes on Harrison, "I was wild with anger, but they soon cured me of that. I swung round once when someone laughed behind me, but a prick of a bayonet brought me to my senses. Then someone kicked me in the shins and another spat at me. I turned on him and a howl went up. But a sharp order from the rear stopped that, and then they began growling like a pack of surly dogs. Dogs! He spits the word out viciously. That's the only fit name for them. Lord, if our officers treated us as theirs treat them, we'd mutiny. At least, I would." A nurse comes in just at this point, and notices Harrison's flushed face. She threatens to separate us if there is any more excitement. "Bad for his head," she whispers to me. I suppose she is right, but I am longing for the end of his story. I get it along in the afternoon. "I don't know how many days we were marching," he says. "To me it seemed like years. Of course, I was alone all the time. They gave me food, but I had to eat by myself. They treated me as if I had the plague. Do you think," he asks me earnestly, "we'd be as rotten as that if we had one of them in such a fix? And not a smoke all the time. I wonder they didn't starve me or stick a bayonet through me. Sometimes I felt like doing it myself. I'm surprised I didn't when I look back on it, but I suppose we all like to be alive." This is a very much older Harrison than the boy I met last. Then he was 18. Now he's 30. "We were way back of the fighting most of the time," he goes on, "though we could always hear the din of the guns. Then one day it seemed to come very near. Next I heard the shrapnel again, and then the ping of bullets, so I knew we were nearing the real fighting. Finally, about 3 o'clock on an afternoon, I saw a village in the distance through the shade of thick trees. and I realised that there was a battle on in that town. God, it was good to know that you were somewhere near, even if I was on the wrong side of the line." Then began his real ordeal. He had re-entered the fight in the midst of a street scrap, one of those contests in which the houses on opposite sides of a street form the lines for the opposing troops. Almost before I realised what was happening, I found myself in a house. It was dark. They had closed those long French shutters. But presently I was close up beside one. Through the cracks I could see the street, very narrow and clouded with smoke. I kept on peering through. They had forgotten me in the excitement. Suddenly a head bobbed up on the opposite side. A Tommy. I could have shrieked with delight. But the next instant a red-black spot appeared on his forehead, and then the head disappeared. They'd shot him, the brutes. How I loathed them. Harrison stops for a moment, and there comes a glare in his eye. I'm afraid he's getting excited. I feel I ought to stop him, but I dread the coming of the nurse. The glare dies down, and I am relieved. In its place comes a look of determination. "I just made up my mind then," he says, "that I would not stay with them. I guessed that they'd kill me if I tried to get across, but I decided to risk it anyway." The door of the house had been blown open by a shell. This gave him his chance. He moved towards it, and presently caught sight of a window on the opposite side, from which glass and frame had been shot out. Sprint across and climb through, that was his programme. "No one was watching me," he explains, "and I'm a pretty good runner. So I tucked my head under my arm and dived into the street. For a moment no one fired, each side probably dumbfounded by the sight of this man dashing through no man's land. Then rip, rip, spoke up the bullets from both sides. But the moment had been enough. He was almost across. He felt a tickling sensation in his shoulder, a stab in his right foot, but he managed to muster up his energy. "I'm British! British!" he shouted for the benefit of his own side. "Don't shoot!" By now the others had recognised him. Too late, however. He had dived through the window and was safe on his own ground. "When I woke," he finishes, "I was in hospital, and here I am again." For 5 weeks they keep me in the hospital, part of the time in bed, part hobbling round on crutches. I learn to be thankful that I am not crippled for life. While Harrison is with me we have excellent sport. There is one person who plays poker and another who is learning golf. Each day the latter comes home with a tall story of some extraordinary stroke that he has mastered. Finally, one fine morning he invites us all out to watch him, and we stroll out to the 9-hole course. After much hemming and hawing, primping and prancing, he swings. Something hurtles through the air. For a moment he watches it with the critical eyes of an expert, then turns to us triumphantly. "Well, what do you say to that?" We say nothing, but our glance travels significantly but silently to the earth. His follows. There at his feet lies the ball. Perplexed, he looks at his stick. The head is missing. In deference to his cloth, I refrain from repeating his comment, but that afternoon he deserts the links for the tennis court. Soon it is discovered that Harrison's wound is not healing properly, so they send him to his native English air. I am chumless, and consequently rather cheerless. What an appallingly monotonous thing convalescence can be. This early to bed, early to rise existence may be healthy, but it fails entirely to appeal to me. I begin to long even for the roar of a Jack Johnson. So when at last I get my orders to march once more, I leave with a light heart. My wound, I find, has placed me in the veteran class, so my duties are to be easy for a time. I am sent to the signal depot at Abbeville to act as instructor to recently arrived rookies. All morning I lecture to them on such diverse matters as their duty, the difficulty of being hygienic under fire, how they may accomplish the first and overcome the latter. In the afternoon, with the aid of maps, we plot out a line of our own. We pick different points to represent different brigades, each about 2 or 3 miles apart. Then I distribute fake messages, and find out how long it will take the novices to deliver them and return to their base. Some prove to be splendid messenger boys. Others get the opportunity of returning to England, with the option of transferring to another branch of the service or doing a clerical job at home, but these latter are few and far between. However, this job does not last long. Soon I am in excellent condition, a fact of which the authorities make me aware by informing me that I am to report to a brigade stationed outside St. Eloi. I am in no hurry now to get to the line, so I dawdle luxuriously along the road. A beautiful wooded road, over which the sun is shining amiably. Why must men mar such scenes with smoke and fearful slaughter? You see, I have lost all my enthusiasm for the noble art of war. At St. Paul I stop off for a good night's rest and a visit to a local movie house. I see Charlie Chaplin in the Children's Auto Race, and laugh at it with all the abandon of a regular fan. Next morning I am on the road by 6 o'clock, and by 8 I have arrived at my new station. The Hooge show has about begun, so I am plunged into the thick of it promptly. The first day I ride to Ypres, the sight of which fails to revive in me any respect for the great god Mars. But not until next morning do my troubles really begin. It is August the 1st, on which date we lost a recently achieved position by an overpowering attack of gas. For the first time in my life I am made familiar with a gas mask, not the ingenious contrivance which our troops wear now, but a home-made variety that is anything but comfortable. It consists of a piece of saturated cotton wool tied up in a strip of gauze, which is strapped over the nose and mouth. I record a mental resolution that, law or no law, no dog of mine will ever again be subjected to the indignity of a muzzle. But I have seen some men already writhing in an agony of suffocation, so I submit to my mask without demur. I am inclined to think, however, that it affected my sight as well as my sensation. Else how account for the accident that presently overtook me? I have just rounded the bend of a road. Yawning in front of me is a shell pit, large enough the Lord knows, to be seen even by a blind man. Yet it escapes my notice until forcibly thrust on it. Plop! I go into it, again on top of my machine, which, this time, succumbs under my weight. I have probably put on a few pounds in that excellent hospital. Anyway, the front wheel crumples up like so much cardboard. I get to my destination on foot and return by the same method, to be met by an irate officer who gives me a very sound rating for the negligence to which he attributes my mishap. Didn't I know that it was a new machine and very precious? He gives me another and dismisses me with a message and a warning. I start off in a downpour of rain, and am not more than half an hour on the road when I come plump into a 5-ton truck. I try to pass it, on the wrong side of the road. To punish me, it crowds me into the ditch. In spite of the warning, I prefer my own safety to that of the machine. I jump clear, and the back wheel of the truck passes over the gearbox of the bike, which also crumples up like so much cardboard. I am debating the desirability of footing the rest of the journey or commandeering the truck on the spot, when I perceive another motorcycle approaching. The rider is good enough to give me a lift. I deliver my message and once more return to my headquarters on foot. And oh, the dusting down I get now! My officer, recently arrived and in consequence most conscientious, threatens to report me for carelessness. How I should like to be that man's superior for a few minutes. I'd teach him to treat veterans with a little more deference. The worst of it is that I know he is quite right, and I am very conscious of the fact that for a seasoned cyclist I am doing very badly. However, circumstance forces him to entrust another bike to my bad hands. This time I am sent to a small village on the north of Ypres. I get through safely, and am about to leave the signal office when someone stops me. Would I take a message to a battery commander located in a dugout on the main road midway between this point and Hooge? I agree, of course, on the one condition that my brigade is notified as to my delay. En route I become painfully conscious of the extraordinary activity of the Boche guns. The shells whir over my head at the rate of 60 to the second. I cover my mile or two at about the same speed. I get through, get my receipt and return in safety. The incident passes from my mind. Pass 4 or 5 days with the same dangerous routine. These are hot times for the town of Hooge. At the end of this time our brigade is relieved and we retire without reluctance for a rest. It is a couple of mornings later that a large and hirsute sergeant major wakes me up with the message that I am to report at 8 sharp to the Brigade Signal Officer. What for? Don't know, but you'd better not be late. That sounds promising and sets my brain to work. Had that blankety-blank rookie officer reported me after all? If he had, well, I only hoped that we would both survive the war and that the gods would be kind enough to make his path lie near mine. Nothing for it, however, but to report in time. I do so. The officer looks me over. Oh, you're Corcoran. Yes, sir. His tone relieves my tension. Well, at 8:30 you're to see the brigade major. See that you get there on time. More mysteries. Again I report promptly, and once again am met with a smile. You've been recommended for a commission, he informs me amiably. I suppose I look puzzled, for he adds the explanation. For good work, carrying despatches under fire. The commission, he goes on, is to take effect from August the 17th. It is now August the 20th. He shakes my hand and wishes me all sorts of good luck. I depart, extremely perplexed. What else have I been doing since the beginning of this business but carrying despatches under fire? What else had I been doing when I received my wound? I decide that strange are the ways of the War Office. While I am deciding it, my feet lead me involuntarily to the Signal Office, where the Signal Officer is still sitting. I put the problem up to him. He smiles. Do you remember, he asks, on August the 1st delivering a despatch to a battery commander outside Hooge? Of course I do, but what of it? Well, he explains, you may not be aware of the fact, but 6 men had tried to carry it before you, and every single one of them was killed. Good Lord! The ejaculation comes out unconsciously. There can be no doubt of the fact that ignorance often brings bliss. Thus, unwittingly and involuntarily, do I become a hero in spite of myself. Thanks be to Mars, he is henceforth my friend. Next morning, August the 21st, I receive my discharge and am sent back to England for an officer's training. Automatically my commission is in the Signal Service of the Royal Engineers. My orders are to report on arrival at the Signal Depot at Fenny Stratford, where I find Lieutenant Colonel Lister as officer commanding at the time. He grants me 5 days' leave, in which I may see my friends and get my new uniform. I rush down to Devonshire, where my people are just then, and live for the first 3 days in a blur of handshaking, hugging, kissing, questioning, from which I finally escape to London. Follows a hectic time with the tailor, a round of dining and dancing. I find no let-up in the old life here, but oh, how the good time flies. Then on the 5th morning, togged out in my new trim dress, I report for duty at my station. I have quite decided, of course, by this time, that I shall have at least 4 months at home. They can't turn out completed officers in a shorter period than that. So I begin to plan for myself all sorts of pleasant surprises. Let all those eager youngsters who are so anxious to get across hurry over if they want to. I'll take my time. I am quite aware of the fact that the Boche will still be waiting there, and far be it from me to unduly hasten the meeting. At Fenny Stratford an adjutant takes me in hand and inculcates the first principles of such important trifles as esprit de corps. Then he turns me over to the officer in charge of the school. He puts me through my paces to see what I know. Ever done any telegraphy? Ever heard of such things as circuits? I inform him that I have taken an electrical course at Cambridge, which elicits an exclamation of pleased surprise. Then, of course, you've been in touch with the signallers all the time in France. You know about cable laying, airline rigging, etc. I allow that I am at least initiated into these intricate rites. Ever ridden a horse? He asks me next. Well, I ranched in Bolivia for a few years. Good. It won't take you any time to get on to the mounted drill. I should think you'll be through it in about 10 days. Through? What did the man mean? I don't know what sensation my expression signified, but he goes on pleasantly in his reassuring voice. Oh, yes, another 3 weeks ought to see you back on the line. My Lord, why haven't I learned to keep my mouth shut? Once more my Spanish castle comes tumbling about my ears. I always thought I was a fool. Now I know it. My stay at the depot is not prolonged over 2 days. Then I am hustled off to Haynes Park, Bedfordshire, and put into a drill class that has commenced the same day. I get a mount. Poor beast, if he were mine, I'd either shoot him or pension him for the rest of his natural life. However, having taken one look at my Sergeant Major riding master, I keep all such reflections to myself. What a martinet the man is! And heavens, what a voice and tongue! Now, gentlemen, he bawls before beginning the class, you're here to learn to ride an horse, and I'm here to learn ye to do it. I know very well as how ye're officers, but the half hour ye're with me, please remember ye're my pupils. Now then, all who think they can ride, ride out in front. For a few seconds I hesitate. The man has cowed me. Then I take a chance with 2 others. Where did you learn to ride? He asked me sarcastically. In Ireland, and then in Bolivia. Oh. He turns to the man next me, a chap named Finney. I'm from North West Canada, Finney informs him. I ain't inquiring about your birthplace. I'm asking if you can ride. What a terrible man! But Finney is not terrified. Well, I've been at it 20 years, he replies with a drawl. The Sergeant Major turns to the third. Poor chap! He had learned in a London riding school. We are put through our paces in front of the class. Finney and I manage to qualify, but the rider from London. He is informed, quite audibly, that when it comes to managing horses, he may be an excellent master of his mother's clothes horse. As the first 6 of the 10 days are devoted to teaching the others to sit astride, Finney and I are dismissed. We have some grand gallops all over the country. What a magnificent horseman that man was! I doubt if I have ever seen his equal. Then for the last 4 days we are told to chip in and pick up the mounted drill required of a signal officer. It isn't much, and the horses, well trained brutes, carry out the orders on their own account. That over, we are handed our certificates, that is, all of us who manage to qualify. Follow 7 days' leave, another oasis in the desert, from which we return to be placed on the list for the overseas draft. For a week I do such routine duty as that of orderly officer or paying billets. This last is incidental only to certain depots and camps. Where the number of men is too great for the regular accommodation, they are placed with private people round, a regulation which adds from 15 to 22 shillings weekly to the coffers of the families chosen for the honour. An officer is detailed to distribute the money, At the end of the week I am chosen with several others for the doubtful honour of a cook's tour. This tour consists of a 2 weeks' visit to the firing line, and its object is to give young officers an idea of their future duties, before they are entrusted with a section of their own. At the conclusion of the tour they return to England sometimes. My case, of course, came among the exceptions. Some people have none of the luck. End of section 4.